We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule today to join us for our annual Action Plan Public Hearing webinar. We are going to go ahead and get started because we want you all to get back to doing the important work that you're doing. My name is Christy Fletcher, and I will be facilitating the discussion today. I want to introduce some of the program staff that work here at DCA that will be joining us and speaking today on some of the items that we have in the webinar. Joining me today from the Housing Assistance Department is Michael Thomas, and he will be speaking on the Emergency Solutions Grant and HOPWA, the Housing Opportunity for People with AIDS, as well as Brent Allen with the Community Development Block Grant Program. December Thompson and myself will be sharing the information on the Home Investment Partnership Program as well as the National Housing Trust Fund Program. And then we have, we're graced with the presence of Christy Barnes, who is the Director of Legal Services here at DCA, who is going to share a little bit about our Fair Housing Initiative for the upcoming year. Today, what we're going to do is pretty much go through the slides. We have uploaded the annual action plan draft on our website, which you are able to access now. I think it's available. There's a few things we want to add to it in the page numbers, but in the meantime, the data that's in the document is accurate. In addition to that, today we are going to take some questions. So feel free to go ahead and type that information into the webinar box, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. In the meantime, we are going to go ahead and get started. And you're welcome also to just wait if you want to have your questions submitted during our 30-day comment period. Okay? So primarily, we're going to hold on here while I get the clicker going here. Technical difficulties. I'm still here. Hold on. All right. There we go. Wake up. So today we are going to go over a few things that are primarily in the slide. I'm going to bring up the agenda in just a moment, but in the meantime, today's public hearing is going to be slightly different than what we have done in the last few years here at DCA. We typically have had our public hearing to do citizen input throughout the year and then write the document, and then we will, go around the state. But this time we decided to go ahead and prepare the draft annual action plan, and so that we can have specific things that we can highlight, and then you can have the document and comment on that. So this approach is kind of like a test drive as we get ready to undertake our 5-year annual consolidated plan process. So during that time, we're doing this, and then what we're going to do is probably have some citizen input, some consultation meetings, as well as some other outreach sessions so that we can gather information going forward. So today we're going to do a little bit of an overview, and everything that we talk about today in these slides are condensed version of what's in the annual action plan. So we wanted to highlight, of course, there are some not major, but there have been some changes in the method of distribution for the 2 programs that are required to identify them in the plans, which is the Emergency Solution Grant, in addition to the Community Development Block Grant. So there are slides to kind of talk about those methods of distribution. And you can also find those particular, a more detailed version of that on our website. In addition to that, we're going to identify and talk about a little bit about our HOPWA goals, and then we are going to share a little bit about the National Housing Trust Fund, which is a new program under the Community Planning and Development Program with the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We are going to highlight some of our fair housing initiatives that came out of our analysis of impediment study last year when it was approved in April 2016. And this year we have identified some private and public initiatives that we're going to undertake, as well as what funding sources are going to be earmarked at the start of addressing those issues. And then we'll share some of the 2017 goals, which is very similar to what we have been putting in our annual action plan each year as we close out this 5-year annual consolidated plan. So, and then we will just kind of briefly talk about what you can expect for our 5-year consolidated plan moving forward. And then we'll open it up for question and answer. As I stated, the full annual action plan draft is available on our website, and at the end of the presentation I have a link, but you can also just go to the dca.ga.gov website and you can download it, as well as see the public notice that is on the website. Okay? All right, so as you do know, the consolidated plan consists of the programs, as I indicated, Community Development Block Grant, the Home Program, the Emergency Solution Program, as well as the Housing Opportunity and for Persons of Age, and the National Housing Trust Fund. And these are the programs that we're going to be discussing today. No other programs. All right. Also, the consolidated plan consists of a strategic plan that is really what we're going to be doing when we start our 5-year input session mid-summer this year. But it identifies and addresses our needs that we are going to be utilizing those funds for these 4 types of activities: housing, economic development, public service, as well as public facilities and public infrastructure. Our 5-year plan has a standalone annual action plan after the first year, and this is the last one that we are that we're presenting today for our consolidated plan that was dated 2013 through 2017, which is also available on our website. Our next planning period, as I indicated, will start mid-summer, where we will address identify some of our needs and start getting data and information from the general public as well as some other entities mid-summer. That will then be our planning period for 2018 through 2022. And so that's where we are with our consolidated plan. Now, one of the things I would like to just state that the DCA as the lead agency, that we are definitely in the process of making sure that we are identifying all of our housing and community objectives around the things that are just been kind of coming to our attention in the last 3 or 4 years with fair housing, 501, our 504 plans, and homeless needs, all the things that have just been coming to our agency. So it's very important that we identify, here are some of our 6 housing and community objectives that you will find in our annual action plan. So that really governs the way in which we do our planning, as well as the things that we are looking forward to doing in the next 5 years. So as I segue and get ready to talk about and hand it over to the program staff for ESG and Hotware, as well as CDBG, to talk about some of the changes in their method of distribution that they have identified to, access, making sure that we are partnering with different entities and agencies throughout, as well as we continue to foster inclusive communities, providing decent and affordable housing, creating jobs, and making sure that we have a strong economic development base so that we can definitely continue to do the great work that we are entrusted with these funds to do. So we are going to turn it over to Michael Thomas, and Michael is the program coordinator with the ESG Emergency Solutions Grant under the Housing Assistance Program. Michael?
Thank you. So I'm going to present changes that were made in the method of distribution for the Emergency Solutions Grant Program and the HOPWA program for the current annual action plan. In the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, first change I'm going to discuss is related to funding for homeless management information systems that is provided through the ESG program for our subgrantees. We changed the language to make eligible activities associated with HMIS data entry for a centralized assessment hub. This language wasn't there previously, and this change was made due to a HUD requirement that we form a centralized entry system for homeless people utilizing these programs. So that was a change that was made in the method of distribution. The second change, we are moving away from transitional housing and to rapid rehousing as an intervention. Federal funding hasn't been provided through ESG for transitional housing for about 5 years. We are making the same move with our state funding through the State Housing Trust Fund Commission. So with that in mind, the change that we made is that in state fiscal year 2018, transitional housing funding is only available to agencies that were also funded in state fiscal year 2017, and it must be used to bridge the project into a rapid rehousing model. The next change, Project Homeless Connect, which was previously funded, is no longer available for funding in state fiscal year 2018. Street outreach was added as a priority for federal funding through the ESG program. Funding for homeless management information systems was added as a priority for state funding, and it remains a priority for federal funding. And this is associated with the requirement to form a centralized entry system to our services. Transitional housing was removed as a priority for state funding in association with our move away from that project type. The next change, ESG funds must be matched 100% by the subgrantee. This is for federal and state funds provided through the ESG competition. However, we added language saying that DCA reserves the right to reduce the required match for specific programs providing high priority services in areas with demonstrated need. So what that means is the federal ESG funds still have to be matched. We will handle that at the DCA level for specific project types if deemed necessary in certain areas. There is one such project in our current application process, which is open. And then finally, family violence agencies must use the HMIS comparable database designated by DCA. It is a HUD requirement that these agencies use an HMIS comparable database. The previous language did not specify that it had to be the database designated by DCA, so we changed the language in the method of distribution to reflect that. We did change some of the funding ranges for specific project types in the ESG program for this annual action plan. For emergency shelter, there was no change. For transitional housing, the maximum funding was actually raised a little to help facilitate the bridge into rapid rehousing that I discussed. For street outreach, the maximum was raised. For supportive services, the maximum was lowered. For rental assistance, it remained the same. For hotel-motel vouchers, the maximum was raised. And for HMIS, the maximum was raised. And then I'll go through the only change we had for the Housing Opportunities for Persons with Aid program, or Persons with AIDS, excuse me, was a change in our goals for this annual action plan, and you can see those on your screen here. Okay, I'm going to pass this off.
This is Brent Allen. I'm going to be discussing some changes in the method of distribution for the Community Development Block Grant Program. So we're covered by the Housing and Community Development Act, and it states that states receiving grants pursuant to Section 5306D, the title, the statement of projected use of funds shall consist of the method by which the states will distribute funds to the units of general local government. So we don't know our 2017 numbers yet because Congress is still operating under continuing resolution. So just as an example, we'll use the numbers for 2016. We don't expect a lot of change for 2017. But assuming that we had the same numbers, we would have an annual competition, 26 million and change. Those applications are due April 3rd. So they will be coming in next week. We have 3 set-aside programs. The Employment Incentive Program, we set aside $8 million. The Redevelopment Fund, $1.5 million. Immediate Threat and Danger, $500,000. We had some significant changes that we're proposing for the method of distribution for 2017. We are raising single activity grants from $500,000 to a maximum of $750,000. Multi-activity grants we're raising from $800,000 to $1 million. There were some initially proposed caps on administration. We've removed those so the administrators can receive a full 6% of the grants that they're working. We also put a minimum floor in for smaller grants for $25,000 for administration, so it makes it affordable for the administrators to put together and conduct smaller programs. And then the cash match amounts are adjusted up to match the new award amounts, and I'll get to that in just a second. So again, these are our new maximum grant amounts. Single activity, $750,000, up from $500,000. Multi-activity, up from $800,000 to $1 million. As I mentioned, we are extending the cash match requirements. They're not really changing, they're just extending out to the new maximum grant awards, 5% up to $750,000 and 10% for any amount of above $750,000 up to $1 million. This is cash that has to be put into the program from the local government, from any, could be any source, but it does have to be cash. The single activity neighborhood revitalization applications are exempt from the cash requirement. We also changed a small change to the rating and selection scoring. We used to have a maximum total points of 500. We've added 5 bonus points for closing a local revolving loan fund, so that raised our maximum total points to 505. So that's the only change, is adding an additional 5 points. So some communities have a local revolving loan fund. We currently have 72 operating revolving loan funds across the state. If they have a local revolving loan fund, they can receive 5 bonus points for closing that to be used on their next CDBG application that's submitted within the next 2 program years. That's sort of the carrot on the program. Also, if they have a revolving loan fund that has to be in compliance by July 1st for their CDBG application to be scored. This is my last slide regarding the revolving loan fund. So again, they can earn 5 bonus points by closing their, if they're just not, we have a lot of communities that are not using their revolving loan funds, sitting on a lot of cash, so we're giving some incentive for them to close them, return that cash to us so we can get it circulated. And if they do this, they'll need to set up a payment plan if they have any loan receivables that are still outstanding. And again, the bonus points can be used within the next 2 program years, or they will expire.
Okay, so this is Christy Fletcher. I'm going to speak a little bit about the National Housing Trust Fund. And I'm standing in the gap for Brittany Days, who is the policy analyst who pretty much got everything together for us to accept these funds as a new program in the community planning development. The National Housing Trust Fund was established as under the Title I of the Housing and Economic Recovery Act in 2008. It sort of kind of delayed because of the source of funding that was going to be allocated for this particular program, and it was designed to for affordable housing to produce and preserve certain affordable housing. We finally got approval to start receiving the funds from Fannie Mae under the FFY18, and we got our first allocation of funds from that source of dollars in 2014 last year. And in 2015, the HUD published the interim rule that was issued, sort of kind of stating exactly what the National Housing Trust Fund, how it will be administered, and they decided to put it under the Community Planning Development Program. One of the things about the National Housing Trust Fund here at DCA, the priorities are determined through a needs-based analysis, and primarily it is to help Georgia identify people that need affordable housing, that are extremely low income and very low income households. So right now, until something changes, that is the demographic of individuals that are earmarked for this particular housing. So the challenge is here at DCA is to ensure that we can do the type of affordable housing that is decent and safe and sanitary, but also that is affordable on the development side of the spectrum, so that we can meet the needs to service these individuals. The extremely low income is 100% focused right now, not to exceed $1 billion. So, we are challenged with making sure that we can definitely get construction costs down, so that the rents can be earmarked, and we're pretty much looking at a lot of different other subsidies and sources to kind of make sure that we can identify that, so that we can increase the supply of affordable housing for these individuals and these households that are below 30% of AMI. In addition to that, DCA, we don't have, right now we do not have a specific geographic set aside for these particular funds. Our allocation plan does indicate that we will do a NOFA annually for this in a competitive round process, very similar to our other programs. So that won't be much of a change. It will be developed annually, right at this point, and submitted to HUD. We did do that already for our current funds, and later on, December we'll have the whole allocation amount for what the National Housing Trust Fund received out of the 2016 allocation, and what the estimate of the 2017 we expect to be. Right now, at a minimum, it would be $3 million. So, as I say, the funds will be awarded on a competitive basis, and will be provided outside of our low-income housing tax credit program round. So we're looking forward to that. So to kind of give you a breakdown of what the funds are, as I stated here too. 16, we did get a little bit more than the minimum from the 2016 allocation at $3,318,674. Right now, since we don't know what the 17 allocation, we put the minimum there at $3 million. We do have a 10% of the allocation does go to administrative and planning costs. It's interesting because this has a longer affordability period, so we have to administer and do the administrative. So off the top, 10% can be taken off, and then also 1/3 of the operating costs for operating reserves can be added into this budget. So, and the balance, of course, goes to the new construction that we intend to leverage with other funds, of course. So this kind of gives you a breakdown of that first year allocation, where the 10% is off of the total, and then the reserve. Okay, so that is the National Housing Trust Fund. fund, but like I said, if you want to, there's more information on our website under that particular program with the allocation plan, and there no such should be out right now under the housing development program. So Brittany Days, I have her contact information at the end of this presentation. So if you have more questions regarding the National Housing Trust Fund, you should probably reach out to her and she can direct you in the right location. So what's new? What's new in the Fair Housing Initiative world? Well, we're going to get a little bit of information from Christy Barnes, who is going to share that with us.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. At DCA, we are focused on our obligation to affirmatively further fair housing. In keeping with that focus, we have a few initiatives that are new as it relates to our targeted attention to addressing fair housing needs and the impediments that have faced communities throughout the state as it relates to fair housing and fair housing education. Our agency initiated an analysis of impediments study. That study was a survey of the situational analysis of the state to identify barriers to affordable housing as well as barriers to projecting and educating citizens on fair housing laws. We approved our analysis of impediments in April of 2016 and have implemented a number of policy changes to address the impediments that have been laid out in our analysis of impediments. One of which is Section 504 coordinator role. Our agency has declared an official role for that title for our agency. That would be me. I serve as our agency's 504 coordinator. And as the 504 coordinator, my role is to coordinate the agency's response to accommodation requests as well as accommodation concerns and all related matters for fair housing for the agency. Similarly, our agency undertook an opportunity to revise our language access plan. This plan is specifically targeted for persons with limited English proficiency. It will lay out how our agency will assist persons with limited English proficiency, what tools we will use, as well as what expectations we will inform our subrecipients of in how we anticipate they will also correspond with persons with limited English proficiency. The plans that we've laid out and that we are continuing to develop all generally are in the vein of promoting coordination with our subrecipients and our recipients and all of our partners alike on what our fair housing obligations are, what obligations are being transposed and being borne by a relationship with subrecipient funds, as well as how we can overcome the obstacles that were outlined in our analysis of impediments. We also will continue to develop affordable housing and incorporate our fair housing obligations in all planning efforts. In our analysis of impediments, we outlined private sector impediments as well as public sector. 3 of the private sector impediments that were listed included discrimination based on race and disability in rental markets, failure to make reasonable accommodations and modifications in rental markets. Black or Hispanic home loan applicants were denied more frequently than white and non-Hispanic applicants. Our agency is developing a series of outreach and education events to overcome these impediments. There will be targeted events for targeted populations and targeted partners to help us reach the masses who might experience these challenges. Other impediments include female applicants have a higher rate of denial than male applicants in rural Georgia home markets, limited access to fair housing enforcement entities throughout rural areas of the state, and the overall need for additional fair housing outreach and education. In our planning efforts, we plan to address these items by incorporating more outreach and education events that will include financial management for groups who might have traditionally had higher denial rates than others. We will also implement our Fair Housing Month campaign next month. That Fair Housing Month campaign will be our agency's widespread announcement of the importance of fair housing, distribution of fair housing education and fair housing laws, and partnerships with communities that will help us reach those that are least likely to be served. Our agency has developed a fair housing media toolkit that will be available to be shared with partners, and partners will be encouraged to use their social media and public platforms to pass along fair housing law information and fair housing requirements. Other public sector impediments were identified to include the limited presence of fair housing enforcement entities in rural Georgia, the need, again, for more education and outreach, NIMBYism, and public policies used to limit access to affordable housing. To address these, we will, in addition to our outreach and education campaigns, we will be including mechanisms to share data and information with our partners so that they can assist us in overcoming issues like NIMBYism and overcoming the not in my backyard approach to some policies outside of the agency. Finally, the last two impediments that were outlined in our analysis of impediments were related to individuals with housing choice vouchers being predominantly residented in high minority concentrated areas and the limited knowledge of fair housing law in rural areas in the state. The agency is working with the Housing Choice Voucher Program to ensure that the mobility of choice option through the Housing Choice Voucher Program is outlined in Housing Choice Voucher planning, and to ensure that our representatives have all available tools for the Georgia Housing Search application that will allow anyone with a Housing Choice Voucher to choose housing within their appropriate needs for areas throughout the state. With these initiatives and these impediments, we plan to also include outreach and targeted education events in rural areas to overcome these factors as well. Once again, if you have any questions about Fair Housing Month, which is April, and we will be doing a widespread media campaign. If you'd like to receive a copy of the toolkit, you may request that to me directly. It's Christy Barnes. I'm with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, and contact information for me can be and will be provided after the session as well.
Okay, well, that's some good news. Thank you. Next up on our agenda is December Thompson, who has been diligently working these last few years on our action plans and our capers, but she's going to highlight our proposed activity and funding for the 2017 round. December? The state is biased to simulate the model set forth by HUD as stated in the HUD 2014-2018 strategic framework. This framework focuses on creating communities that are strong, sustainable, affordable, and inclusive for all citizens. Based upon this model, the state's goals and objectives for community development and housing strategy consist of expanding economic growth opportunities in local communities with assistance from private sector businesses and providing housing assistance for underserved populations throughout the state. The following three slides list the type of activities and their resources that DCA will implement to meet the annual goals. So we have 16 activities, and the following resources that will be available to address these activities will be HOME, CDBG, ESG, HOPWA, and National Housing Trust Fund.
discusses the one-year goal for 2017, and it's broken up in how the housing activities that will address homelessness, non-homelessness, and special needs. How we address those activities will be through rental assistance, the creation of new units, rehab of existing units, and acquisition of existing units, which will be down payment assistance. Here you have the previous funding allocations for 2015 and 2016, and the proposed 2017 allocations for CDBG Home, ESG, HOPWA, and National Housing Trust Fund. As stated, these are the proposed allocations. When we receive the new allocations, we'll be sure to let you know what those are.
Okay, thank you, December. So what we have here is primarily how we are going to allocate our funds. We do have, as we stated earlier, because we do not know what our $17 are going to look like for our 4 or 5 programs now. We just pretty much have restated them for the ESG and HOTWA, but we have been a little bit conservative and took a 10% cut with the understanding that home and CDBG will still be in existence, and that we will have some funding to still operate on our programs. However, I just want to go right back to our most of the programs, as you see and what you will see in the annual action plan that is identified here in our goals and objectives, we have sort of aligned them with our fair housing initiative. So when you see the full document in the back, there is a fair housing goal, and we have kind of aligned all of the activities that we intend to do from in the goal name with the fair housing. So with that being said, I think we have pretty much wrapped up. We did not want to give you all of the goodies on this webinar because we think that the document has more of the information that is needed for you to read for the next 30 days. We are definitely taking comments. The plan is available on the DCA website. I know you can't necessarily click and be directed to the website from this particular, but if you go to the dca.ga.gov and hit communities, and then go to the community initiative, you'll see consolidated plan, and you'll be able to access that. As well as if you go to housing development, you'll get the you'll see the analysis of impediments there, as well as in more detail, as well as the National Housing Trust Fund. And I believe also to the public notice that is on the website directs you to the method of distribution for the ESG and also the CDBG. So all of the information that you need to read in more detail from today's public hearing and webinar is identified on our website. Now, what I also like to draw your attention to is the next slide that we have everybody's contact information on. So if you have questions from today's webinar, as well as questions as you're reading, you can go ahead and send them to the housing planning at dca.gov, and we will direct it to the individuals to answer the question. In the past, we have not necessarily responded to questions as they come in. We just it's our rule that we put it in the actual final document. So that has not been determined. If we have a lot of questions, we probably just go ahead and put everybody's questions. We like to just make sure yours is documented. But also, too, the questions and comments that you have for this annual action plan is really a prelude to us going into our 5-year comp plan. So we're really looking for this particular webinar and public hearing and the information that we have here to kind of help us structure as well as plan out our next 5 year. And we anticipate doing doing things a little bit differently. Christy Barnes, there's her direct contact information about learning more about Fair Housing Month, to ask any more questions about that as she directed. And I think that's all we want to share today, and that what we want to do is go ahead and open, if anyone has any questions that we can see, we want to answer any of those. Now, I hope you had an opportunity to download the action plan, because it's been up on our website according to the public notice for a couple of days. We also will, as December indicated in the notice, that we will mail out hard copies if someone wants them, but it'll be a little delay, and we're not going to, it still is within the 30 days, so for us to get copies printed and mailed out to you, you definitely will lose some time as opposed to just downloading it from the website. So we'll look to see if there's any questions. We are looking now. Just go ahead and type in your questions. We'll wait just a moment if someone has any questions for anybody. We're still here. Well, great, outstanding. So this is no questions. We will allow you to go and download the document and start reading it. And as it indicates on our notice, we will have it up for 30 days, and the comment period will close April 30th. Oh, there you go. You got it in. All right. Let's see what the question says. Okay, the question says, what sources do you plan to combine with the Housing Trust Fund, National Housing Trust Fund? We're going to have to get back with you. Marty, I see that you asked it. Let me go ahead and, since Brittany is not here, and I had to stand in her stead, I knew someone would ask the Housing Trust Fund question. Let us go ahead and get that information to you and send that directly. I definitely can get that to you if that's okay. Type okay if that's okay. Matter of fact, when we get back to our office, we will send her a quick email and respond back to you with that, because that's probably easy, and we just don't have that information with us today. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, what I'll do is we're going to end this webinar. We do really appreciate everyone who took the time off to attend. As I stated before, we will have, like I said, this is a test drive to the way we're going to handle things moving forward, which I think will go a little bit smoother and a little bit more efficient. And we look forward to your comments and anything else. Uh-oh, you all are coming in with the questions. Maybe I need to wait. Everybody's typing while I'm talking. Okay, we got another question. Is the recipient required to have an LEP plan of their own? Are we talking about recipients, applicants that have applied for funds?
I can answer that. This is Christy Barnes. Thank you for your question. We will have, some of our programs do have the requirement that certain subrecipients submit their own language access plan, and that's the plan that will assist persons with limited English proficiency. If you are participating in a program similar to maybe CDBG or you're receiving subrecipient funds, you will have gotten a notice with your application process to say you would need to certify that you will provide us with a copy of your language access plan in order to be in compliance with receiving those funds. If you don't have a plan or you would like to review your plan, the agency is providing research and resource documents on how to compile a language access plan similar to the plan that we have identified, that includes how to complete your own 4-factor analysis and how to develop an approach to assisting persons with limited English proficiency. You can look forward to receiving documents similar to that within the next month.
Okay, good. I think hopefully that answers your question. Now we have another question that says, will you be sending out a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? Yes, we can upload a PDF version of today's PowerPoint presentation on that same website, the community initiative where the draft is. So we'll add that to the website by the close of business or first thing in the morning today. Tomorrow, rather. Close of business today, first thing in the morning. All right. I'll say it again. Is there any more questions? Going once. Going twice. So, all right, well, this is going to conclude our webinar. We do appreciate you coming on again today. And if you have any questions or concerns in between time, you can go ahead and send your information to the housing planning at dca.ga.gov. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.